Have you ever squeezed yourself into an airplane seat, knees pressed against the tray table, elbows negotiating space with a stranger and thought, why is this called economy class? The word sounds practical, almost polite, like you're simply making a smart financial choice. But as the seat refuses to recline and the snack is the size of a cracker, it starts to feel like economy might actually mean survive. So where did this name come from? Was it always this cramped? And who decided that this tier of flying should be defined by thrift instead of comfort? The story turns out to be a fascinating mix of history, psychology, and clever airline marketing. Let's explore, right here on History of Simple Things. To understand the term economy class, we have to rewind to the very early days of commercial aviation. Back in the 1920s and 30s, flying wasn't public transportation, it was a luxury adventure. Tickets were extremely expensive, planes were small, and passengers dressed like they were attending a formal dinner. Think suits, hats, and polished shoes. Only the wealthy or business elites could afford to fly. There weren't classes at all because everyone on board was essentially first class by default. You weren't just traveling, you were participating in something exclusive and glamorous. But as technology improved and airplanes became safer, bigger, and faster, airlines began dreaming of something bigger too: mass travel. By the 1950s, aircraft like the Boeing 707 and Douglas DC-8 could carry far more passengers across longer distances. Suddenly, airlines had a choice. They could keep flying small numbers of wealthy travelers at high prices, or they could lower fares and fill more seats. That's where the concept of tiered seating began. Airlines realized that not everyone needed silverware and champagne to get from point A to point B. Some people just wanted an affordable ride. So instead of making every seat luxurious, they created different service levels. At the top was first class, space, comfort, and perks. At the bottom was something new, a cheaper option designed for travelers who cared more about price than pampering. This is where the word economy enters the picture, and it wasn't chosen accidentally. Cheap class or budget section would have sounded embarrassing and unattractive. Nobody wants to admit they're flying the bargain bin. But economy, that word feels smart and responsible. It suggests efficiency, practicality, and good decision-making. It sounds like you're being financially savvy, not deprived. It's classic marketing psychology. Airlines weren't just selling smaller seats, they were selling the idea that you were making a wise, economical choice. In other words, you weren't sacrificing comfort, you were optimizing value. As air travel expanded in the 1960s and 70s, this model exploded. More families could afford vacations abroad. Students could visit relatives overseas. Business travel became routine instead of rare. Economy class essentially democratized the sky. It transformed flying from an elite privilege into something closer to a bus or train in the air. The trade-off was obvious: less space and fewer luxuries in exchange for lower prices. Airlines packed seats closer together, simplified meals, and reduced extras. The cabin became denser, but the ticket price dropped enough to bring millions of new travelers on board. Economy wasn't just a category, it was the reason modern air travel even exists. Over time, though, the meaning of economy subtly shifted. What started as reasonable comfort at a lower cost gradually became the absolute minimum airlines can provide while still being acceptable. Competition pushed airlines to cut costs further and further. Seats got narrower, legroom shrank, free meals disappeared on many routes, bags became extra charges. The word economy stayed the same, but the experience evolved. And that's why today, the term sometimes feels ironic. It's less about comfort and more about efficiency, fitting as many people as possible into a flying metal tube while keeping fares relatively affordable. Interestingly, airlines didn't stop there. They added new layers to the system. Premium economy appeared as a middle ground, offering a bit more space without the business class price tag. Then business class became more luxurious, and first class became almost hotel-like on certain airlines. This stacking of tiers makes regular economy seem even more basic by comparison. It's a clever framing effect. Once you see what's above you, your seat feels smaller than ever. Yet for most travelers, economy still represents freedom. It's the gateway that makes spontaneous trips, overseas reunions, and budget vacations possible. There's also something poetic about the name. Economy comes from the Greek word oikonomia, meaning management of a household's resources. That's exactly what travelers are doing when they choose this class, managing their budget. Maybe they'd rather spend money on food, experiences, or hotels instead of a wider seat for a few hours. In that sense, economy class isn't about deprivation at all. It's about priorities. It's a trade. A little discomfort now for more adventure later. So the next time you buckle into that snug seat and wonder why it's called economy class, remember this. The name isn't about what you're missing. It's about what you're gaining. It represents the moment flying stopped being only for the rich and opened up to everyone else. It's the reason you can cross oceans for the price of a few days' salary. Sure, your knees might protest and the armrest might spark a silent war with your neighbor, but you're still doing something humans could only dream about a century ago. You're flying through the sky at 35,000 feet. And maybe that's the real economy, trading a bit of comfort for the incredible privilege of going almost anywhere on Earth. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.